Hello everybody and welcome yourselves back to Sam's Pizzeria. For the very first time I'm in the host seat. I've been trying to avoid it for as long as possible, but fortunately Stu has dragged me kicking and screaming to be, host for this evening. I'm joined tonight by a very star-studded cast. I'm going to start with Gogsy, mate. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Motherwell in the semi-finals. Can't wait to get started.
We'll talk about that draw later, mate. I'm pretty sure me and you could have some words on it. We'll go to Paul, mate. How are you doing? It's been a wee while since I've seen you.
Absolutely. I'm great this weekend because my team's not playing. So.
I was going to say, mate, it must have been quite a hard one for you. You've got the highlights since your team's not here. Then we'll finally go to Alex, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too great. I think Gogsy knows why my weekend was absolutely ruined, but yeah, I'm feeling okay now. I've got to the acceptance stage of the cycles of grief.
Well, the good thing is, mate, we're going to just let you relive that entire memory because we're going to start with the Motherwell game. So, Friday night game under the lights at Fir Park. I think it was about an 8,000 crowd. There was over 8,000 there at the game, which, to be honest, for a televised game, I thought was absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed the game. Thought it was a brilliant market for the Scottish game. We're just going to start with you, Gogsy, since it was your team that won. How did you think it went?
Well, I think it was a very cat and mouse first half. I think Dundee United were a bit more comfortable in the ball, and it's a common theme with Motherwell at the moment. We take a wee while to actually get started, and then it took us about half an hour to actually start stringing a few passes together, and we get that unexpected goal from Zach Robinson right in half time. It was very uncharacteristic of him to score a goal, and then I think as the second half came in, we sort of felt a bit more comfortable with the goal, gave us a bit of confidence, and of course Louis Moult comes on, changes the game, and of course the narrative goes that ex-Motherwell hero of mine goes and scores an absolute zinger, and thankfully he wasn't given another 10 minutes because I think the score would have been different had he been given a bit of extra time. But thankfully we got the penalty. Lennon Miller showing the big cojones he has by scoring in the 92nd minute, and Motherwell's first trip to Hampden. That's a cup game for 6 years.
Fair enough, mate. So sticking on Motherwell then, so as obviously you said, Zach Robinson gets his first goal, I think, for the club.
Mm-hmm.
Moses has been kind of knocking on the door for a few weeks now. At any time he's came on from the bench, he always seems to have an impact to his scores. It's justified probably from Kettlewell for the fact that Zach Robinson does score the goal, but do you think moving forward that Moses is still the player that should be brought in from the start, or do you think they should give Zach Robinson a chance based on that game?
Well, the thing is, Moses is a fantastic impact player. I think that's about 4 or 5 times now he's impacted the game late on. So it's a tactic that works, but the problem is we never give ourselves an early foundation to build on, and I think that's key. So I would happily start him in the next game. But it's justified Zach Robinson coming in and starting because he got his goal on Friday night. But I much prefer Moses. I think he's a much better target man. He actually keeps a hold of the ball, whereas Zach Robinson, he's good at a couple of things, but he needs a bit of improvement.
No, I think I would agree on that. So then flipping it over to the other side on the exact same argument, Louis Moult scores an absolute cracker, but he's in the same position where I don't think he started a game yet this season for Dundee United, has he? It's been Van der Sand that's been kind of preferred in that role. And then given the fact that I'm sure only Miller Thompson has got the only goal from an attacker from your boys this season, do you think it's now time to see if Louis Moult can then do the job?
It's weird because I think Van der Sand he's very good at hold-up player, but the issue was he was on hiding to nothing pretty much the entire time because United were playing one up top. There was no support really, and Lucas Stevenson was kind of playing in a kind of left wing back role, and he's more of a left back than a winger. So he was kind of sorry, on the right side, not the left side, and he's just kind of thinking, United were too defensive in the setup the whole game, and then they change it up. Sam Darby comes on as well, who's the lone player, and I think he had a really positive impact and really should have scored the 1-on-1 just before Moult scored. And I'd like to see them both start, Moult and either Moult and Van der Sande or Moult and Molten Sam Darby, also Glenn Middleton as well there, who came on and seems to have been out in the cold. He came back on. He had a huge impact when he came on. He caused Motherwell some real issues. So if he can hopefully get 90 minutes fitness, he's another player that can start, another attacking player who we all know should be good enough at this level, but for some reason always seems to go missing. You'll have one good game in 10. I think he scored the one goal against Days at Alkmaar and then went missing for the rest of the season, unfortunately. And it's just it's this thing. I think Goodwin still doesn't quite know his strongest 11. Even though it's been a really good start to the season, we don't really know we don't know if is it going to be a side that's going to be the top 6? Is it going to be a side that's going to be just trying to stay in the division? Not quite sure yet.
So quickly on that then, you spoke about obviously playing maybe 2 up top, like Van der Sande and maybe Louis Moult. Would that be, you'll know better than me, would that be a switch of formation for you guys? Because I know, was it maybe like a front 3 you had with Trapanowski on the left and maybe was it Will Ferry maybe off the right? Or am I getting that wrong?
Well, yeah, Will Ferry, I think Trapanowski was playing it wide and didn't have his best game. He's kind of gone a little bit missing in recent weeks. The same with Babunski, who's also been kind of playing in a kind of number 10 role. I think both of them had relatively poor games on Friday night. I mean, I think, they set Heather on fire when they started. When they, in the derby, both looked brilliant. But I think it's tricky. Goodwin's already changed the formation slightly. He took Kevin Holt out the side, which was a really positive development. Because I think Holt, he's a great player, but he's not a defensive midfield player. You saw against Rangers on Sunday. On Sunday past, he just can't deal with the pace of the better teams in the division. You can get away with that. You're playing St Johnstone, playing Ross County, you're playing Rangers. You're not going to get away with that. Playing against Motherwell, probably not going to get away with it either. Gogs will be happy that I'm mentioning Motherwell's on the better side in the division. But it's. I think he does need to tweak his formation slightly, or he needs to get the sort of number 10 role much closer to the striker. Because, like I say, Van der Sande, he's a decent player. He's not a goal scorer, but he's a decent striker, a decent forward. But he's on a hiding to nothing if there's no one within 20 yards of him at a goal kick.
Yeah, I remember the first game of the season against Dundee. I did feel that Van der Sande came across as more like a creative striker and he did like a more poacher. And you saw, obviously, with the assist that he got for the first goal. I know you'd referred back to, Motherwell winning there, and so it's going to be good for Gogsy this one again, because I want to talk about Lennon Miller just for a small part in the penalty. For such a young lad, I mean, we've spoken about this so many times, but the composure of the boy, there's no part of that I feel he's going to miss that penalty. And you look at that in terms of, I think it's the boys at Stevenson that gives away the penalty, who again, I think is only 21. It's a bit of naivety for him. So, what's your kind of take on Lennon Miller, mate? Because the more you see him, the more it just looks like he's going to be a superstar.
Ever since he came in, or he started coming in as like a sub at the age of 16, and he always had that bit about him. But you see so many young players move to bigger clubs too early in their career, and thankfully he's just gone from strength to strength, and it was no surprise that he stepped up and dispatched that with such conviction.
Aye, mate. Honestly, like I said, I think that boy is going to be an absolute superstar. It's just any single thing I see him, he's so composed and everything. Even just watching the highlights for me, it was he's given responsibility in most things, where it's like free kicks in at the box. So it shows obviously Kettlewell has highly rated him, even just at that age. I think the final point that I've got on the Dundee United Motherwell game was one that came from the chat, and it was the beating is cheating. Constant remarks from, I'm pretty sure it might be Callan that was doing them more. Maybe just as impartial as a neutral, I didn't see much wrong with the performance. But for you, Alex, obviously being on the losing side, was there anything that you kind of had gripes with?
Having watched back the highlights and calmed down, not really. And I'm one that I do actually sympathise with the referees probably more than most. Especially when there's VAR involved. Fortunately, there wasn't on Friday night, but at the time I thought Mishak went down late on. I thought that was a penalty. I've watched it back and it's a total dive, and he was ready to get booked for it. And obviously the Stevenson one, it was a definite penalty. You could see it from the other end of the ground. It was definitely a penalty. I think, you know, it's one of these ones when it's a game like that and it's quite a tight game and you're not getting the 50-50s go your way, you're going to be moaning at the ref. But I mean, you can't. I didn't think United had too much to moan about. I think there's been having had a whole year of championship refereeing, which is not great in comparison. It wasn't too bad. One thing I would like to say though about the game, and it was one of the best atmospheres I've seen at a game in Scotland in a long time. I think the whole ground was bouncing the whole night. It was, you know, I think it was the biggest crowd Motherwell had for a non-Old Firm game since they played Panathinaikos. So, and that was whatever 15 years, 10, 15
2012.
years ago. 2012. So yeah, there you go, 12 years ago now, and that's. And you know, 2,500 United fans on a Friday night coming through. It's a shame they didn't get the win, but it was an absolutely great atmosphere to be in, and it's one of those games that I think had we won it, I'd be saying, oh yeah, it was one of the best nights that I've seen. But unfortunately, that's football, isn't it? So
it was kind of like your typical old school cup tie, like. Yeah. Like when you remember from like 10 years ago, that was a sort of ethos that gave out, and it was like either way, like it was a wonderful occasion, and unfortunately for yourself, like the result didn't go your way. But I think if that game had been played 10 times, we'd each won at 5.
Yeah, it was very much. If it was a boxing bout, it would have been called on points, split decision,
100%.
I wasn't, you know, getting stopped in the 5th round after being knocked in 3 times. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But you know, it's one of those. I think there was one thing I would say on United actually. When it went 1-1, I thought United retreated. You know, Motherwell had a couple of good chances actually. Before the penalty, and I think United should have really heeded that warning, got out and been a bit, you know, engaged a lot higher up the park, and they didn't, and eventually paid the price in the penalty, which was foolish, but you know, it was coming, it was inevitable.
I have to agree. I thought, like, just based on that atmosphere comment, it just always seems to be like a Friday night game. See, under like the lights at any stadium, I feel you always get like an absolute cracker. Just watching it, it was obviously wasn't the same score or anything the same in that sense. But see, the 6-0 game, it was between Motherwell and Hibs. Like, it just had that feel off it, where it's just a late night game and it's just end to end. It was always a cracker. Right, so we'll get you in it now, Paul, because you've just been sat there waiting for your good time. So we'll move on to Ross County 3, St Johnstone 3. Obviously, heading up to Dinkwell, I think not many people would have had this game in their calendars. It's going to be one that, I'm going to mark that to make sure I watch this, because I'm pretty sure even this is one of the games that we said was one of the most depressing fixtures in Scottish football in the chat a couple of days ago. But both teams, it obviously ended up being a cracker. So what was your thoughts on the game, Paul?
I was just on the Motherwell game. I did see the winning penalty, and it looked like kind of absolute scenes with Fifth Park after that. But it's a lot of a good night for you, Cogsy.
Wonderful.
Well, go back to St Johnstone and with Ross County, St Johnstone. St Johnstone went 3-1 up in that game, but the defensive frailties came back. You know, the wins that got Craig Levein the sack. When they gave away 2 or 3 headers in the last 10 minutes, and Ross County came back and drew. But St Johnstone were looking good before that, and you know, I don't know why they just never shot up short and defended well and saw the game out. But the boy Nicky Clark, he's playing ever since Sadeby got sent off, and Sadaby's not been back in the team obviously. But he done his cause well. Brilliant in that game, because they get 2 free kicks. Don't know if you've seen any of them.
I was going to say you're taking the thunder away, mate, because I was going to ask you on those free kicks, but you're well ahead of me on them. I was going to say on Nicky Clark, because obviously the 2 free kicks they're incredible strikes, mate. And you're obviously talking about the comment, obviously Sidibe and Kimpioka are ahead of him in the pecking order. How much of an impact do you think that Nicky Clark can have for the rest of the season? Because given like he's got the experience, And fair enough that he is behind these two boys. But these two boys are also in the last couple of weeks showing maybe their disciplinary records not the best. So he might be relied on much more than he's expected to. Do you think he can have a good impact?
I think if he leads for the front like he did at the weekend, I don't see him letting anybody else back in the team. And obviously the other boys, it's their own discipline that's let them down. So, and he stepped up at the weekend and scored 2 absolute bangers, the free kicks. The second one especially, it's about 30 yards, it's a great strike. So, I mean, they'll just need to try and do a bit better defensively in the coming weeks. St Johnstone, but I mean, up top again, they'll look all right. In terms of Ross County, I mean, they showed good battling qualities to come back and draw 3 each. Been 3-1 down. You know, most teams would have thrown the towel one, but you know they kept going. A couple of long digs into the box, and they got the rewards from them. So
it's incredible how it's the same goal twice. It is this crosses at the back post. You think after Samuel gets the goal, they would, follow a runner going at the back post instead of just leaving. There's like no one within 5 yards of Akio Wright when he heads it in. It's an incredible piece of terrible defending.
2 3 headers.
It's the sort of thing you do when you get relegated. I'm not saying St Johnstone will get relegated, but
I was going to say, mate, not even just relegated. I have watched Rangers on a weekly basis give up the same goal over and over. It's always from a corner, mate, and so it's not even just the teams that are, threatened with relegation. It's just switching off. So
keep that for November, please.
We'll try. Going to you then, Gogsy, like on these results, like most obviously expected Ross County to follow up the one against Dundee last week with a win. But given the context of the game and obviously the 3-1 down with 10 minutes to go, do you think it was an opportunity missed for them, or do you think it was a valuable point? Because these are the home fixtures against teams that you should be winning, against teams like that around you. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's always situational. Like if you expect to win a game and then you find yourself 2 goals down with 6 minutes to go plus stoppage, like you'll instantly take a point. I think, usually it is like St Johnstone and Ross County are stalwarts of the bottom 6. Like usually it's between them for like a playoff spot or worse. And I had a drawdown for this game. I expected them to be battling, and it turned out to be an absolute slobber knocker. So great entertainment for the neutral, of course, because it's 2 sides that will count that as a missed opportunity for 3 points, especially St Johnstone having such an assailable lead with 6 minutes plus stoppage to go. But there's plenty of time left in the season, and neither of them are at the bottom right now.
So then I'll go to you, Alex, with this then. So obviously, Ronan Hale gets another goal for the Ross County at the weekend. You kind of look at him, he's come in and he started fairly well, taking off from Simon Murray. And then you look at players like Josh Nisbet, who they brought in, who was the A-League Player of the Year. Do you think Ross County then should be looking up the table rather than kind of consolidating themselves and just finishing like a 10th outside the playoff place? Or is it a case of the other teams in the league still have much better squads? Because I've been really impressed, especially with Josh Nisbet so far. I think that boy's been a very good signing for them so far.
Yeah, I think Ronan Hale's a brilliant find. It's a sort of player you'd think would go to St Mirren, an Irish player that they would find out of nowhere and somehow be brilliant. But Ross County do have a knack over the years of finding players out of nowhere, diamonds in the rough. Obviously you go back to Hungbo and Regan Charles Cook, probably the 2 most notable. Even Alex Shelk and Liam Boyce, if you go far enough back.
Throw Jan Danda into that mix as
Jan
well.
Danda, of course, as well, yeah. And obviously part of that's necessity in the fact that they've got to look elsewhere for players, because players have to relocate to go play for Ross County. You can't live in the Central Belt and then go and train in Dingwall. It's just not doable. I know some players have tried it. It's just it is geography is just makes that too difficult for them. But you do think each year they've got a squad. They'll have a few good players in there that they maybe can make their way into the top 6, or certainly away from relegation spots. But I think over the piece they have a manager who is, I think, okay in Don Cowie. I don't think he's a particularly brilliant manager. I think he's at the start of his career, and he's deserved chance to manage Ross County, but I don't think he's amazing. Better than some others, as we'll get on to later. But realistically, if they finish 10th this season, I think that's still a good season for Ross County. They've had 2 playoffs in recent years. The Thistle one that really could have gone the other way, and they could have been the championship, and a championship that looks very competitive. I think if they're able, like, if they manage to stay where they are now and come January, that would be excellent for them. Especially given, if you look at the teams behind them, Killie, Hearts and Hibs should all click into gear at some point and work their way up the table. St Johnstone obviously being the side that you would say are their main rivals in terms of budget, in terms of size of support, size of club generally, you would think automatically at the start of the season it would be those two fighting it out for the bottom 2 spots. So to stay 8th at the minute, to be only a couple of points behind Dundee United, only a couple of points behind St Mirren, who are in 4th and 5th, it's a great start. I was up in Dingwall for the game where they played against United at the start of the season, and they were absolutely excellent for 45 minutes. They should have been 3 up, but they weren't. And that's the issue is they've got Hale, but is he clinical enough? They need someone with a bit of pace probably on the side as well, just to add to that. So it's difficult for Ross County, but I think if they play the way that they've been playing, they're certainly not going to be in any trouble.
Aye, I think I agree on the point with the pace. I feel like they always seem to have one or the other. Like where they have a Jan Danda, obviously the Regan Charles Chute and all that, and moving on. So it's just about getting that balance where they can find both of them. Keep on the game for one more point then. It was something I kind of picked up in the group earlier. I feel I was the only one who said it wasn't a penalty, but Sinclair's challenge on White. So I'll go to you, Paul. What did you think? Do you think it was a penalty?
I did. It looked like it, to be fair.
Do you think so? Because this was one that I kind of had it similar to the one that McCrory had on Kyogo, the first game of the season, where it's the momentum of the keeper that brings them into him. And I know there was a lot of people saying, "No, that should have been a Stonewall penalty." But again, I just didn't think that this was a penalty. I thought it was far too similar to the one where the momentum just brought him into the keeper. And fair enough, he's turned his back to him, but I didn't see anything in it that could have constituted a penalty.
It was one of the ones, wasn't it? I mean, he's running through and the keeper puts his back. It's got to be a penalty, really. I would say. I think the keeper's made the ref make the decision, so that's the way I see it.
Right, so then I think I've got one more thing for the St Johnstone game. So obviously Andy Kurt's kind of been brought into the interim manager role. How much of an addition do you think Gogsy he'll get at St Johnstone, or do you think it's more a case of them kind of steadying the ship enough to then maybe go out and look for? I know Gary Boy has been kind of linked by Ethan. He thought he'd be a good fit, and there's obviously Rhys McCabe at Airdrie, who I think could also be a good fit for the job.
I think it's just a steady the ship job. I don't expect fireworks from St Johnstone. I rarely do, but I don't know. Like, I think McCabe would be probably the ideal replacement because he'll instill some new ideas because he's a young and up and coming, and he's not a dinosaur. And I think he's a fantastic manager. But I genuinely don't see him leaving Airdrie for St Johnstone. I think his long-term vision is to get Airdrie into the Premiership.
See, I would have agreed at the start of the season on that, but I just feel there's something a bit off at Airdrie now, and I can't really put a finger on it. I know that Aidan was talking in the chat that at the weekend, like he subbed off a striker or something, and the players kind of looked in disbelief. So maybe there's something going on there, mate, and he could maybe be tempted by the job, even though I do think it would just be kind of switching divisions at some point because St Johnstone for me will go down this season. Right, so we'll move on. So probably the biggest news of today, but it would be very, very easy. Oh, hello, Ethan. Nice to see you, mate.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. How's yourself? Just talking about we're just about to go on to the St Mirren Hearts game first before we move on to Rangers Dundee.
Yeah,
so we're going to start. So it'd be easy, for me to kind of start on the big news, but I want to kind of talk about the game first because that would make my job far too easy just talking about, Naismith. 2-1 to St Mirren, a game that stretches, I'm pretty sure it's like 8 games in a row now for Hearts that have lost. I'm going to absolutely butcher his name here. let's see that Olasanya. So Olasanya gets his 6th goal of the season, which I'm sure matched his tally for last season. How impressed, Alex, have you been with him this season? Because obviously he was a bit of not a joke figure at St Mirren last year, but that kind of Siebel role where he was always kind of known for his misses rather than his scoring.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's almost a bit like, we'll also speak about Aberdeen later, but it's the same with, Sockler and Papa Gay, where they've kind of, been these characters that have been on the fringes, not really seen as a bit of dud signings, to be honest, and they came good. And I think, the St Mirren start they've made to the season, this is huge. It's a huge win for St Mirren. I think, obviously they had their European adventure, which was absolutely great for them, to get into Europe for the first time in the best part of 40 years. I think, obviously they've come. The issue is, if we look at the history of teams that have gone into Europe early and got knocked out in the early stages, they then go on to very bad seasons. Look at St Johnstone, obviously United in recent years. But I think this win gives them a platform to build on for the rest of the year. Obviously, the League Cup didn't go to plan for them. They've had the spell of, they've played Celtic, which didn't go, which was a pretty, one-sided affair, which it always is when you play Celtic. So I think St Mirren are now in a place where they can really do something. And another thing as well is just the crowd again, really big crowd at St Mirren Park. And it seems to be the support at the local town has really bought into what Stephen Robinson's trying to do with the club, and the fact the club's fan owned. Everything that seems to be going up at St Mirren in the long run, everything about the club seems ran really well, which is always a good marker. As you see, obviously, when things go wrong, everything tends to go pear-shaped, but I think St Mirren should be maybe not top 6, but certainly, no lower than 8th or 9th.
We'll come back to that point, because I've just been informed that Ethan, you've only got a small bit of time. We've brought you in here to talk about the Rangers-Dundee game as our most knowledgeable man on Dundee. So take it away, mate. What was your thoughts on the Rangers-Dundee game?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I remember listening to an interview I don't know if it was a few years ago or a few months ago. Honestly, my scale on time is completely broken. But I can remember Charlie Mulgrew being asked on a podcast once about what he thought about the mentality teams have going to places like Parkhead and Ibrox. Because obviously when you listen to players in the media, like, the official mainstream media, the tabloids and such, they'll always say, oh yeah, we're going there, we're actually quite excited, we want to showcase what we can do. And I find that very difficult to believe. And it's because when you watch that display Dundee had, it was like they were panicking every time they were on the ball. When Dundee used to compete to places like that in the early 2000s, one thing that I thought was quite notable is that was a team filled with Argentines, Italians and Georgians, guys who are perhaps a bit naive about Scottish football. They see these stadiums as platforms to showcase what they can do. I don't think they buy into any sense of fear. They see an opportunity, whereas I think with our current crop just now, I think they dread it. They dread playing there, and maybe it comes down because they've played there several times across the board of the season, which was something that Jockey Scott even said to me once. He feels if you go to these places only once, twice a season, you maybe have a completely different mindset. But no, for me, I think the players certainly they buy into the fear of going to places like that, and it certainly shows. Dundee lacked maturity and composure on the ball. That's the difference. You watch Rangers, they can commit, they can play with bravery, they can commit to first-time passes, and nice free-flowing movement. Dundee just simply didn't have that in the locker. Dundee had 3 great chances to score at different points in the game. One of them at 3-0 down, and it was still no cool heads in front of goal. Every single opportunity was absolutely fumbled. So, yeah, I think you've got to give credit to Rangers, because Rangers have had to, like I say, whilst I'm on about Dundee not doing enough, at the same time, Rangers have had a job to do. They've won convincingly, and on the back of that Old Firm result a few weeks ago, a question can be asked about players going hiding, and that wasn't the case. They got that big result at Tannadice, and they followed up now with a very good cup win. But now I look at Dundee, and I think there's a whole new question to ask about them, not just mentality of going to places like this. But last season as a newly promoted team, Dundee only lost on back-to-back games twice, prior to the split, and the first time was in February. And then in the split, I think we're definitely winless. We didn't lose every single game, but we were certainly winless in the split. So now, of course, it's a defeat to Rangers, and prior to that, it was a defeat to Ross County. So already we've met the back-to-back defeats quite early in the season, and we're renowned for those responses to disappointing results last campaign. You lose to Aberdeen on Saturday, then that's 3 games consecutively you've been beaten. So you like to think that because it's a home game, we're going to see that response. We tend to play a lot better at Dens, to be fair. But yeah, there's certainly questions that are about to be asked. And my real last note on the game itself is when I talk about lacking composure, when I talk about lacking maturity, that Dundee lineup that played at Ross County, the most experienced defender in the back line was Antonio Portales, a foreigner who's had 1 season in the Scottish top flight previous. He's surrounded by Ziad Larkesh, Ethan Ingram, and Billy Camacho, guys that are 20, 21 years old, relatively inexperienced. So when Jordan McGee then came on as a substitute, you could see it added a bit more steel into that back line. McGee started this time on Saturday, but there's still, I think, that sense with the other defenders that they're still lacking that extra bit of experience. And we're expecting Clark Robertson to make his debut soon. He's been injured since signing for us, and he might very well prove to be the missing piece. I think Dundee last season had guys like Joe Shaughnessy that were critical in our run of form, whereas now I think, like I said, we're maybe just lacking a bit of leadership at the back.
So 2 points on that then. So based on the game itself and then the wider picture, obviously you talked about the occasion on Saturday kind of maybe overrun some of the players. Do you think a factor of that might have been the switch back to Ibrox? Because I know there was a lot of the time before this that I'm pretty sure we spoke before it, and the expectation was this game was going to be at Hampden, and you would have had a much probably better chance there because the Rangers fans are disgruntled with that. Do you think that switch back to it at kind of short notice maybe instilled some fear into the players and obviously gave Rangers more confidence?
Yeah, I think Dundee would have been a lot more confident if the game was at Hampden, 100%. I think they had a game plan for both because they've known, obviously, for a fair bit of time. It's not something I'd want to dwell on too much, but it certainly is a factor because I think because it's like that homecoming feel, I think it gives the Rangers players a bit of a boost too. But in my case, I just look at this Dundee side and I see a team that has a sense of fear going to places like this. You talk about wanting to introduce these winning mentalities. That's the perfect game for it to be on display, to show what you're made of against the higher sides. Not saying I'm expecting Dundee to go there and win by any means, but I'm expecting to see them have a go. Expect them to play with bravery, play with no fear. But no, there was just so much of a sense of panic. And I don't think it's I certainly don't think it's a coincidence. I do think that the Old Firm has this reputation. Rangers and Celtic have the reputation for being obviously the big dogs of Scottish football. I think players dread playing against them. And I think it's a very difficult thing to get a team to snap out of, to go to game into that and have a sense of optimism, to have a sense of belief. The way I saw Falkirk play against Celtic, I'm thinking Dundee should have been taking pages out of their book. First to winning battles and getting in their faces.
So obviously, like you're talking about the panic in the squad then, and I feel if I was looking at it, that panic could have more or less set in with the departure of Luke McCowan, because there's nobody in that squad that can kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck and has that creativity that he did in that Dundee side. There's obviously rumours that apparently Scott Fraser might come into the team. Is he somebody you think that could maybe help out in that department? And would that then involve having to switch from the 4-3-3 formation? Because obviously you've got Silla and Cameron in that midfield who are probably mainstays. So then would you think of switch of formation, or would you put him in for like a Baybrook?
Yeah, that's certainly the question to ask. I mean, when you look at Luke McCowan, he's more than just a creative midfielder. You're not taking things by the scruff of the neck. Yeah, there's an element to him where he can dictate the tempo, dictate the way Dundee play. I don't use the term heartbeat lightly, but he was the heartbeat of the Dundee team. Even if just for smaller things that I think you need to get through a game, you look at intelligence of certain players, just being able to keep possession and slide it out of play, just relieving a bit of pressure on the other players, and we don't have anyone of that mould. Scott Fraser comes in for me, he fits the creative bill. He can get Dundee further up forward. He has officially signed. He wasn't in our squad to play against Rangers. And I think it'll be a good fit. It's a very low risk signing as well. I think he comes with a bit of pedigree, had a very good career down south, a good reputation for the likes of Ipswich and Burton Albion anyway. I know things didn't go all that too well at Charlton, but now he's back in familiar territory. He's back home in his home city, and I think he'd be desperate to do well for hometown team. But will he provide the same aspect that McCowan did? Aside from the creativity, it's still kind of up in the air. I'm yet to see it. I need to see Scott Fraser play before I can kind of get any sense in that. I just know that it's massive boots to fill for more than one reason. And does he take the spot of Braybrook? I don't know. I think I would personally feel that Dundee will have to probably change the system that they've been finding so much success in. That system worked because we had the pieces of the puzzle for it to work. We've taken out a critical piece, and you can't replace wood with sticks. You can't replace steel with sticks. So I think Tony Dockett has a challenge ahead of him to make these changes. He's going to have to try and get the best out of what he's got. I know he's been trying to build a team together, his own team, but I think it can be as simple as you take one key element out and the entire complexion can change.
Honestly, I think everything you're saying there on Dundee is spot on. Going with the kind of the Scott Fraser stuff, I'm undecided what I actually think of the boy, because Adam in the group chat has made me think that he is the worst player in the world. So I'm waiting, with bated breath to see how he's going to be. But I know you've not really got much time, mate, so we really appreciate you coming on to talk Dundee. We really thank you for that. Right.
Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Oh, he's back. Oh, there you go. So we were on the Hearts game. We might as well stick with the Rangers game and go back to it since we're on that. Paul, you watched the Rangers game, didn't you? So I'm going to ask you about the two penalty incidents. Because obviously Rangers get a penalty in the second half. It's a tug on Cyril Deffer's jersey from Mo Salah. But there's an identical one in the first half, if not even worse, Phil, that's not given. So what were your thoughts on the two incidents? Because for me, the first one, like I'm saying, is the far worse foul than the second. Do you think the referee might have went in at half time and saw a replay of it, and that's played into his kind of mindset to give it in the second half because he's now more aware of what's going on in the box?
I just watched the highlights, and I can't remember seeing that.
Was it not on the highlights, that one? Did anybody else see the highlights of the Rangers game for the kind of more or less the bear hug in the first half that Dessers has suffered from?
I seen the second one, and that was definitely a penalty for me. But I can't comment on the first one.
No, I've not seen that one. So with another point in the Rangers game, then I'll stick with you, Paul. So obviously Clement's kind of faced a lot of backlash in a couple of weeks for his kind of team selections, and this one was kind of no different. You've seen a lot of fans on Twitter that were complaining, Bajrami's been put out in the left to accommodate Lawrence, and Dessers has started up front instead of Igamani. Do you think, given that the third goal comes from that left-hand side from the ball in from Bajrami, that he's justified in that? Or is there a sort of validation from the fans that we know Dessers can do it in these games, and this would have been the perfect opportunity, a cup game at home, to see what Igamani could have done from the start?
I mean, from your point of view, you obviously want to see different players getting tried out in these games, but I mean, Clement coming in, he was a high-profile manager coming in to that job with 2 league wins in Belgium. But I would probably, when Graham Souness came, he was inexperienced, so I would make him more high-profile than him because he's got experience. But he's not got the war chest that Graham Souness got back then, so that's going to be a problem for him. So he's got to look at players like Dessers and the guys that he knows can give him quality to try and get him through these games, I think, because he doesn't have any other backup, so are as good at players anyway. So I think obviously he's going to go with him because he trusts him. He knows what he can do. And the boy Bajrami came on and done really well when he came on as well. So
as a Rangers man,
you might see him in the future.
As a Rangers man, it's like I tend to agree with it. I'm always stuck between a kind of like on the fence with it, because I do think that the team that Clement has got, it should be doing better with some things. But like you're saying, mate, he's not got the war chest. His hands are tied behind his back with a lot of things, and because of that, I do feel some of the fans' reactions are over the top. People are just looking for constant digs at any chance they get, and that isn't largely down to him either. That's just for the discontent that the Rangers fans have for the club in general right now. So it's a hard one to balance because he faces the brunt of it, when I know that a lot of the people are at the board are the ones responsible for it.
Financially, at the minute, Rangers are in like the expectation from Rangers fans is to win the league every year, and unfortunately, the finances are non-comparable to Celtic at the minute. Celtic are 40 to 50 million pounds better off than Rangers. They have spent the last 4 or 5 years building a squad each year where they've went and spent 3, 4 million, 5 million, or even this season spent 10 million on Engels to go and then sell on. They have a player trading model that works. Rangers have spent the sort of 2, 3 million on players, and then they've not reaped rewards when they did spend the big money. When they spent 7 million on Ryan Kent, let him go out of contract. Same happened with Morelos. And this has just left them in a cycle where financially competing with Celtic it isn't even comparable. Missing out in the Champions League this year, which I actually think is probably a blessing in disguise. I think that Rangers side would really have struggled in the Champions League. The Europa League is a much better vehicle for progression, and I don't think another 22-23 European campaign would have done the club any favours. You're now looking at the case where they have to spend the next 2 or 3 years. They need to really rebuild. And sure, they get second this year, which is the way Aberdeen are playing, is not a given. And literally look to rebuild, because they can't just keep on sacking managers every 8 months until there's a lot of things going on wrong at the club. The one thing that probably isn't going on that's wrong is Clement, who is a good manager, who's a proven track record, and he's taking a musket to a machine gun basically in Celtic at the minute. He's not going to be able to win the league. All he can ask really of him is that maybe they do well in the cups, maybe they win a trophy and they do well in Europe and they get second in the league. That's the best realistically Rangers can hope for this season.
Aye, it's like you say, mate, context is needed with it, and it's been a catalogue of errors for the last couple of years. But I'm not here to depress myself on a Sunday night, mate. So we'll move back to the Hearts game because obviously that's the big talking point of the week. So I'll stick with you, Alex, on it. Stephen A. Smith. Obviously, this game against St Mirren is the game that ultimately costs his job. It's a really strange one because I think it was just over a month ago, him and his team signed a new deal at the club. Feel good factor over the summer. They bring in some great players. That Gerald Taylor, on the face of it, looked a great signing. Jan Danda, phenomenal signing on paper. Blair Spittle, another steady signing. But 8 losses in a row, it just doesn't seem to have clicked. And it's pure baffling decisions as well going along with that. I know Hearts fans have complained watching Shankland in the 10 or Jan Danda's not even getting a game. So what is your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, if you include the 3 friendlies they played against Tottenham, Leyton Orient, and I think it was Cambridge was the other one, or Fleetwood, sorry, not Cambridge. It's 1 win in 18, which is really, for a club of Hearts' size who should be finishing third, if fourth in the year in a bad season, maybe 4th or 5th in a bad season. 1 win in 18 is not acceptable. It's that. I think Shankland in particular looks to have dropped several levels this season, which is a shame. I think he made a massive effort to make sure he got himself into the Euro squad, to make sure he played at the Euros. And it feels like there's just been that drop off, whether that's mentally, maybe it's physical from the games he's played. Everything that should be clicking isn't. So everything should be clicking, just isn't clicking with Hearts at the minute. And Naismith, who I don't think the fans were really ever infused by. I think he had that really great run of results and got him the job in the first place. It's this kind of thing that I've kind of always suspected what Hearts is, that Naismith was never really, he wasn't the manager that was going, that Jimmy Taylor looks like he's going to be at Aberdeen and build the club up and get them into playing in Europe every year, getting to group stages, progressing as a club. It's a sticky plaster, effectively, effectively a very long interim manager, where he's got the team third, he's got a 4th and a 3rd, and he's now gone into, he's got them into Europe this year. And if you look at the next few games, they've got Ross County at home, which is a must win now because they're 14 points, and they play the game more behind Aberdeen, who are their main rivals in the battle for third, effectively. and they have Europe to start with, and they need to win. In my opinion, they probably need to win their first game if they're going to get out. They'll get in the top 24 spots away or neutral venue with Dinamo Minsk in Azerbaijan, which they aren't a particularly great team at the minute. Dinamo Minsk got the team there 4 or 5 years ago because they've lost a lot of their foreign players because of the sanctions Belarusian clubs are under. So if they don't get a result there, if they drop points to Ross County, suddenly the season is, which has already been a disaster, is so much worse. I mean, I'm surprised that I think the only reason he's lasted this long is because they gave him that new deal, which
I would agree.
Yeah, it's aged like milk. I mean, it's effectively thrown good money after bad. Have to cut their losses, and you look at what if they've got this new investment coming in. Do you really think Tony Bloom's going to be spending 10 million on building a club like Hearts up with a manager who doesn't have any real experience of managing a big club like Hearts, who are big in the Scottish context anyway? He doesn't have a philosophy of particularly young players or bringing players through, which is what they'd want to do. I think now's the perfect moment to just. Well, it's never the perfect moment. Now's probably the only chance that they have to clean the decks, because if they suddenly get 15 games in the season, they're sitting in 10th, 11th or 12th, miles away from Aberdeen. It's a wasted year, and they can't afford to not be in the top 6.
That's a perfect segue for me, mate, on the Tony Bloom point. I'll bring that to you, Gogsy, in terms of seeing, obviously, Davey in the comments talking about how Stevie Robinson might be, a good candidate for the Hearts job because he deserves a crack at it. Do you think if Tony Bloom's investment comes, that they'll have I know they won't be kind of on the board, there's a possibility of a minority stake, but do you think a Stephen Robinson would fly with them as an appointment, or do you think they would maybe look outwards in the league at, obviously, Aberdeen bringing in Phelan and thinking we need to kind of be more progressive with a kind of choice?
Well, I think Robinson is the obvious choice. You've seen what he's done at Motherwell, with a shoestring budget. You've seen what he's done at St Mirren. St Mirren weren't a club that ever reached the top 6, and now they are a regular contender, and they've been in Europe recently. So I think Robinson has, unless he wins a cup, I think he's done as much as he can at St Mirren. So I think Hearts is a good step up, albeit it's a step down at the moment because of their performance in the league. But Hearts have got to be really careful here, because even across the city, Hibs have had that investment with Bournemouth, and look who they're doing. They don't even look like they're going to be in the top 6 either. So money is a fickle mistress. If they don't use the money wisely, then they could ultimately be left behind by the likes of Aberdeen, and open up the door for clubs like Motherwell, Dundee United to make a real claim for the top 6.
I think on that point with Hibs, I think it's a situation that Hearts need to do their best to avoid, because what's his name again? Is it Bill Foley, the boy that's involved with Hibs? I just don't think that's a good setup at all for them, because he's been over the summer kind of putting his 2 cents in, and I would have done this and I would have done that, and you're a minority stakeholder, mate. You put in a bit of money, you do not get to then have the full ruling of the club, or I would have done this better just because in hindsight it might look like the better choice. I think it's really important that Hearts do stay away from that with the Tony Bloom thing, and I probably would agree, mate. I think Stephen Robinson has done an absolute stellar job at St Mirren. He's done a stellar job at most of the clubs at his career in Scotland, and I think he would be more suited to kind of moving up to next to the level at Hearts.
I think just to kind of provide a little bit of me being a bit negative, it does scream a little bit like Jim Goodwin at Aberdeen, where everyone thought it'd be a perfect appointment. Done a great job at St Mirren. He done a great job, previously at Iowa, and then everyone thought, this is a great appointment Aberdeen have made. Really good manager, getting to spend a bit of money, getting to build a team, and whilst he did bring in some great players, it just didn't work out. And I do worry that might be the same with Stephen Robinson, and the fact that it's, suddenly you go into a club like Hearts who are spending big fee, relatively much bigger fees on players. You're having to deal with bigger egos. You're having to deal with the pressures of a Hearts support that will, if I think Hearts have probably got one of the moneyest fan bases in Scotland. The Jamos are probably not going to appreciate me saying that, but I don't think it's. I think it's not. I think it's fairly true. I mean, the way the club's been built, the infrastructure of the club, the stadium, the hotel, all of that, the commercial revenue is set for a club that's in Europe every season. And if someone like Stephen Robinson, who may take a while to get going, he needs to try and put his philosophy in the club, I don't necessarily think the Hearts support would be patient enough for that. And I also don't think Tony Bloom, who I know Kieran Maguire from Price Football, he called the smartest man in football. I don't think he would particularly be keen for another Scottish Premiership manager. I think he'd be looking for a manager from, potentially from Scandinavia, potentially from the continent, to build up the team and to do the sort of recruitment that's needed. So hopefully we get a bunch of random Lithuanians and Latvians coming over again, and it's going to be fantastic, like the mid-2000s.
I've got one more point to make. Robinson probably has to be a bit careful about his next move because he's in a bit of a pattern with his career. Like, he was the assistant manager at Motherwell. We were doing brilliantly for a time, and then he left to go to Oldham, and Oldham were through a manager merry-go-round and have now wound up in the National League, and things didn't go well there. And then he came back up to Motherwell and did a great job, and then he sort of tailed off in the end, and then he went off to Morecambe. And I mean, I think Morecambe was sort of a stopgap job for him before making a move back up to Scotland, because I don't.
They're 100 times better than any team in Scotland, though.
Yeah, apparently. But I think he's probably content at St Mirren, so I don't know if there's going to be much temptation there for him to move.
Do you, out with obviously you can your own personal opinions on it, Gogsy, do you think it is the right move for Hearts to appoint a Stephen Robinson, or do you think are they in the same category as at Aberdeen where they could fall into the trap of kind of the Scottish League merry-go-round of managers? Because obviously, like PLZ, I remember a couple of months before when Aberdeen were looking for their new manager, they were kind of champion for your Neil Lennon or your Jack Ross, and it was just this stuck in this archaic way of the Scottish League. The same way you see in England when they were hiring like a Sam Allardyce or like a Roy Hodgson or that. Do you think that Hearts need to break away from that in the same way that Aberdeen has, given that showing how much success so far Aberdeen have had with it?
Well, I think if Hearts have ambition, I think they'll look to the continent and they'll try and get like a so-called bigger name, someone with maybe experience in the Austrian Bundesliga or Scandinavia. I mean, I think that there are a few good candidates out there, but like, I mean, if you're wanting a sort of project, I think maybe going for Robinson for the next couple of years before like building the club back up, because I think Robinson's got a good history of doing that, and then maybe looking to get a bigger name and maybe try to split the old firm. But then again, the game is played on grass, not on paper. So, like, all we can do is guess.
I'll take that one to you quickly then, Alex. Like, do you think that Hearts have the right personnel for Robinson? Like, do you think that's... I could even take it back to you, Gogsy, if you want. You seem to be shaking your head in the corner.
Yeah. I think Hearts play a different tactic to what Robinson is used to, because Robinson always signs athletic players that can run and are a lot more physical. And I think Hearts have shown themselves to be quite weak on the ball this season. And I mean, 12th place, though he doesn't lie. But I think Hearts have the money for Robinson to actually invest in a good squad. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if he looked to sign a couple of players from St Mirren, for example, the likes of Mark O'Hara, because I think Mark O'Hara is the perfect Stephen Robinson player. He tried to sign him at Motherwell at first, and then got him in on loan, and then he signed permanently. I think maybe someone with the same sort of profile as Olasanya as well would probably, I mean, it would probably be against what Hearts are used to as a club, but I think maybe I don't think it would hurt to actually go down a different route to what they're used to.
No, I would agree in that. Obviously, like you're saying with the players, that it might not be what they're used to, but if there's a manager coming in, you kind of want to give that manager as much familiarity as you want. And if he's seen a player that he can work with at St Mirren, like you say, Mark O'Hara, he could easily do a job for Hearts, mate, in that team, because he's going to have the faith in his manager to do so. We'll move on to the Aberdeen game, because I know that I'm kind of rambling a wee bit with these, and it's 55 minutes. We've still got two
Lee.
games to cover.
Lee,
Yes, mate.
just going back to Alex's point,
Mhm.
I think you've got likes of David Moyes, you know, European pedigrees, win European trophies.
And for me,
Why
I
not?
think David Moyes is waiting for the Scotland job to appear.
100%.
I think that's
Think
what
so?
he's waiting for now. Aye, because
I
mate,
don't know.
because even he was already on a sugary peg, Steve Clark, but kind of the ignorance coming out in his interviews, like, oh, why are people upset? And who was it again? Was it his assistant came out and said, I've no spoke to anybody that's unhappy?
Carver.
Like,
Yeah.
aye, mate, the writing's on the wall more or less for that. So I think he's kind of waiting by the phone, mate, for the Scotland job.
It's at that point I would, if you're the SFA's press officer, you put your head in your hands at that sort of comment. I think
Aye.
maybe for the next camp, maybe have a word with Stevie Clark and Steve Carver, being like, just you can play it down, but don't be, don't just
Don't be
completely
ignorant.
rubbish. Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't. It's not a good look.
It's the fact that people have calmed into it already, and then you just set us all off again. Like the feelings of that game against Hungary just flooded back when you're telling me not to be annoyed. Oh, I should be upset. But
I think Hearts need to go for somebody like that, by European pedigree, because as Alex says, they need to be playing
they're a
well
big
in
enough
the
team, mate.
seasons.
They've been in Europe for a few seasons now. Like, there's no reason why they can't attract the caliber of that manager. If they want to be ambitious, and especially if they maybe do have a Tony Bloom behind them, maybe he'll even kind of have an idea of a manager that would fit the kind of recruitment system that he wants. So we're waiting game, mate, to see what kind of happens. So we'll go on to then Aberdeen, who are already midway through that process, hiring the new manager. So they go up to the north coast at Pittodrie, kind of run of the mill 4-0, wasn't it? I don't think anybody was really expecting anything else for this game. Alex, what was your thoughts on it?
Well, I'd just like to take a moment to sort of praise Spartans. I mean, brilliant club. From and that have worked so hard to build facility at Ainsley Park and lovely people involved. I've been down there a couple of times and it's very very friendly atmosphere, but also do loads of great work in the community in Pilton, which is not the most affluent place in the world, and to see them be the first ever League Two side to make a League Cup quarter final, which it was a stat I'm slightly amazed at. A fourth tier side has never done that before. It was great to see them go up and see the fans go up. And only in their second year in the SPFL as well. So it's great to see them just continue to sort of to blossom as a club. I think if you compare it to the other new arrival from Edinburgh in the SPFL, I think there's a bit of a kind of conflicting paths there. But yeah, I mean Aberdeen were they were excellent. I think 4-0 probably flattered Spartans if anything. It was 1-0 until the 44th minute, and they had several chances to be 2 or 3 up by the time Nisbet put the second in. I was speaking to a couple of Aberdeen fans, and they suggested to me that was their best performance yet. And now, okay, the opposition it is Spartans. You're playing part-time players, and it's not the same as playing against Premiership opposition. But it's 11 wins in the bins. It's unbeaten in 16. If you go back to the last defeat was the penalty shootout defeat to Celtic in the Scottish Cup last season. And the way Aberdeen were briefing about Jimmy Taylor before he came in was that it was going to be, they're going to have to be patient. It's going to be a multi-year project. It's not going to be, might not work out at first, but give him time. And to see him, come in, set Heather on fire, and players like Papagay and Esther Sockler who were completely out in the cold, and even Vicente Bechuén to a lesser extent, who were completely almost persona non grata at Aberdeen last season. Come in and Papagay seems like a goal scoring machine. It's like he's a completely different player. I think that's his 6th or 7th goal of the season so far. Yesterday, it was a kind of poacher's tap in, but he had to be there. It's positions he wasn't in. He wasn't sharp last season, and they look like the sort of Aberdeen team. It's not like an Aberdeen team I can ever remember. Really, you got to go back to sort of UEFA Cup team with 2007-8 to see as good a team as that, and that's after losing their best player. So, if this is the start of a project, Granted, they have had a relatively easy run of fixtures so far in the Premiership. They haven't played Rangers, haven't played Celtic. They haven't had Hearts or Hibs, who are traditionally difficult. They haven't played United, which is always a tough game, regardless of form. It couldn't have been, literally can't have been a better start. And if I think if they actually finish third this season and don't win a trophy, it would be a bit disappointing for Aberdeen fans. That's the expectation level that's been set. So they can't. There's not really too much more you can say other than it's been absolutely perfect.
Mate, I've been very impressed watching them so far. I was going to say again, as a Rangers man, I've been looking over my shoulder, but unfortunately it's them that's been looking over their shoulder at us, because we have obviously started terrible. The boy Nielsen in the middle of the park, I think, obviously comes in as a 32-year-old, and that can give obviously cause for concern that he's just bringing again like a guy for the Keeners familiarity. I think he's been incredible. He's been that stealing in the middle of the park that they've missed. I don't think they ever properly replaced Ramadani in that kind of sense for the squad, so he's a perfect fit. I'll take it to you, Paul, on terms of like the goal scorers against Spartans. So obviously Nesbitt, Sokler and Gay scored. Do you think you have to look at the level of opposition? Obviously, scoring against Spartans maybe a lower opposition, or do you think you just take it as a whole? It's like the goals are the same size in every pitch, and that's a good omen for going forward in terms of have they replaced Miovski well enough for the season? Because obviously that's the biggest talking point before the season starts as well. They have enough firepower to kind of replace him. And between the three of them, they seem to be doing quite a good job.
Definitely. I said in one of the programmes about Sokler, he was looking quite good. Kind of pre-season, start of the season. So I think he'll get a few goals, but I mean, Papaguay last week, he got a double last week as well. So he's obviously a player that's playing off a confidence. And the new manager as well will be giving him confidence. So I think he'll just go from strength to strength. He looks a really good player.
That's exactly what I said about Gay as well, mate. He seems like a right confidence player, and it's no like the same sort of goals that he's scoring at all. Like he'll pop up ahead at the back post at one, and then obviously against Spartans, he's in the right place at the right time. Another player that's in the Aberdeen squad, I'll take it to you, Gogsy, Leighton Clarkson. So he's been injured, I think, from the last League Cup game in the groups. He came back in for this game and scored on a start. Where do you think he fits into the squad going forward? Because obviously he's a boy with incredible talent, but Aberdeen are also on an 11-match winning run. Do you jeopardise that momentum by putting him straight back in? Or is it somebody that he has to now earn his way back into the squad?
I think you phase him in. I mean, he's still a young boy, and you can't just bring someone in cold. I think the Spartans game was a perfect platform for him to come back to, because, of course, playing against the lower league opposition, and I mean, getting the goal, it's great for his confidence as well. But I mean, he'll definitely be fighting for a starting place, but I think it might be a couple of weeks yet before he starts playing regularly. Because I mean, Aberdeen, unlike their nearest rivals, like they don't have European football to focus on, so they've got time. They've got time to phase him in, and I think give it a couple of weeks and he'll become a regular starter.
I think I would agree with that as well, mate. It's going to say, because it's quite hard to say that you're going to drop a Jamie McGrath or something who's kind of a similar player in the squad. And I mean, Jamie McGrath to me is probably one of the better creative players in the league. It's an absolute travesty that the boy never get called up to the Ireland squad. So pretty simple on that one. So we'll move on to our last game, Celtic Falkirk. I'll be completely honest, I missed a red card at the end of the game. I bet Gogsy can also back me up that he missed the fifth goal. So we're in the same category. So this was the game that kind of surprised me the most. Not always because of the scoreline, but Falkirk seemed to be the first team that got at Celtic, and it seemed to work, especially in the first half, to relative success. What was your thoughts on that, Alex?
Well, I think Falkirk came into this, we spoke about, Ethan spoke about fear of Rangers and Celtic when you play in Glasgow, and they came into it without that sort of fear. And they came into it to set about Celtic, and they did it perfectly. They did the job perfectly for 70 minutes. they went toe to toe with Celtic. Importantly, they did better. They were better against Celtic than Slovan Bratislava was. So I think I was justified on Twitter, despite all the hate I got for a week. Best part of well, since Wednesday night, really. So I'm justified, and I am going to gloat in that for next wee while. Which was my whole point. I never said they were better than Slovan Bratislava. I said they would set up better, which is what they did. Obviously, Celtic. There was changes to the team. It was 8 changes. They brought on Kuhn, they brought on Engels, who are 2 brilliant players, and that obviously made a difference in the last 20 minutes when Falkirk tired. But the more I've seen of Falkirk, and the Championship guys will pick it up as well. They look excellent at the minute. They look like they've. I know it's only like 22nd of September. You're already thinking they're going to win the Championship, like by a mile. Obviously, we don't know how that's going to transpire over the next few months. But it's Falkirk. Went into the game expecting to be without the fear that you would see normally in the Premiership, and it paid dividends. And it does show that if you do set about Celtic and you catch them on a less than good day, you can cause issues for them. And I think hopefully some Premiership clubs, I'm saying this is United, who haven't won at Celtic Park since the early 90s, can learn from that.
I mean, I'll keep on you then quick with that, because that is exactly what I feel the Premier League clubs look at that. They have to learn from it, because fair enough, there was 8 changes, but it showed that if you have no fear and you're willing to go, then you might get something. Like Celtic are a phenomenal team this season, but they're not invincible, and other teams just kind of have to learn from this. That what's the point in going there expecting to get beat? Because Falkirk are on this high, like you're saying, they're 5 out of 5 in the Championship. They had no reason not to go there and not feel confident, and it showed in the first half. So I'll take it to you, Paul, in terms of, obviously, Kuhn came off the bench and he scored 2 goals. He was in the same situation as the young Barcelona boy, that Val, who struggled. He quite clearly struggled today with the pace of the game. But Kuhn came on and he completely changed it. He was in the exact same position this time last year, where he faced a lot of criticism for his performances. How much I know it's more of a demand at kind of like Celtic and Rangers, how much do fans kind of need to get off these players back a wee bit? Because it is players coming into a new league and adjusting, especially this young Barcelona boy. I'm pretty sure he's like 19, 20, and he's came for a very technical league, and he's coming up against a John McGlynn Falkirk team. Like, he's going to think, where the hell am I? So, what do you think yet?
I was working today, so all I really heard was Brendan Rodgers talking on the way back, and I think it was only when he made the 2 changes with Engels and Kuhn that they actually had the fluidity that they usually have and was able to take the game on. So, but I mean, supporting a smaller team, you support the team and anybody that plays for the team, and that's the thing though, the old firm that I just can't understand. That there's certain players that will slate, and they're just not, they can't be a favourite with the fans for some reason. But to me, the 11 players that steps on that part, you've got to support them, every single one of them. That's the way I see it. But
Aye, and I'll finish with you, Gogsy, on this. Then this is more for the Championship pod, but like as obviously Alex alluded to, Falkirk are absolutely flying in the Championship. But they go back to league business at the weekend. 5 out of 5. Do you think they've got what it takes for back-to-back promotions?
I think they've got a strong rival in Ayr because Scott Brown's a born winner. So I think it will be obviously between them two. But I mean, Falkirk have 2 games in hand, and at any level, that's a great advantage, especially when you're level in points at the top of the table. So it's just about keeping the momentum, because I mean, they still haven't lost a league game since last year. Last year.
It's a long run, isn't it? I can't remember the exact number.
April last year, I think.
It's 540 days, I think, or something like that. It's a
Yeah.
ridiculously long run for
it's
any
immense
side
as that.
outside of Celtic or Rangers.
Aye, so I think, well, anyone's got their work cut out against them. So, like, even if they had surprised everyone and got a result against Celtic, it's definitely not it's not a pushover. Like, Falkirk, as an underdog, well, they've proven this season so far, because I don't think anyone expected them to be challenging that well. So, I don't know, they could go all the way, but I'm not entirely sure just yet. We'll just ask me in a month, and we'll probably have a better idea.
I'll bring you on in exactly a month, mate. Right? I'll remember it. I'll keep a note on my phone that they'll bring you on in exactly a month.
They'll end up losing the next 3 games now.
I know, mate. You've jinxed them from here to eternity. Joe, we're going to
Jinx.
have McGlynn at your door at some point, mate. Look, for the notes, we've covered all the games, so just going to quickly ask then for everyone's star man of the week. I'm going to leave you to last, Paul, because I don't want you annoying me, because I know you've already kind of told me. So we'll go with you, Alex. Who was your star man of the week?
Because I have a feeling this is going to go to a Motherwell player. I actually think it'd be Leighton Clarkson. If you see, you take his goal well, but if you which was brilliant cross from Rubicic, I almost forgot his name there. But if you see the move he makes for the 4th goal, excellent bit of skill. Sockler tries his best to miss. Somehow it does end up in the net. But I think Clark, for a game where there probably wasn't expectation on Clarkson, he's been injured. He's been injured for a wee while. For him to come back and to look absolutely brilliant, he was probably man of the match. Well, he's definitely man of the match, and the pass for the 4th goal is fantastic. And that bit of skill, it would be on Showboat if Soccer AM was still around. Put it that way.
Right.
And Sky had the rights to League Cup.
I think that's a good choice, mate. Like I was saying, I think Leighton Clarkson is a phenomenal player, and hopefully he can kind of get back to the form before his injury. We'll go to you, Gogsy. Are you going to annoy Alex with a Motherwell player? Or
There's only one player, and it's got to be Lennon Miller.
I thought that would be the one, mate.
He was absolutely brilliant on Friday night. He did all the unseen stuff that no one actually notices unless they make a mistake in it. And I mean, as I said at the start, the cojones for that last minute penalty, it's got to be. I mean, you look at the likes of Aberdeen, Rangers, and Celtic all coming through their ties expected to win. I mean, and then Motherwell and Dundee United is probably the only even tie in the round, the tie of the round, in my opinion. And for Lennon Miller to show that bit of brilliance, I mean, he controlled the whole game in midfield, and I think to win a game that's on a knife edge like that, I think it's got to be Lennon Miller, hands down.
I think Jenna would have probably had the same idea as you until the next morning, mate, when Lennon Miller caused her to have the worst hangover known to man. But we'll stick to you then, Paul.
He's 18. Of course. Fair play to him. Like, I mean, we've all been 18, and we all know the booze culture in Scotland, but I think he deserves that hangover for his Rolls-Royce performance on Friday night.
And then finally, I know who you're going to say, Paul. It's not going to make me any less annoyed, but who was your star man of the week?
It was a toss-up between Nicky Clark for his free kicks, but Dessels, you've got to say Dessels, his movement and his finishing in that game was top quality for me.
It's not something I ever thought I'd hear, mate. That finishing from Dessers was top quality. I will give you it, mate. His second goal, I mean, that took me by surprise. It's a great finish first time. I think obviously the quality of the ball helps him, but I would agree, mate. It's probably one of his better games for us, even though I still stand on the point that he's expected to do them in these games. So, well, I think that is us, mate. I think I've covered absolutely everything that I could have. Managed to get through it without too much nerves. So I really thank everybody for coming on and making this the easiest experience for me. So cheers, guys. Thank you for joining. We've got the championship roundup. It's been recorded tomorrow. We're not too sure exactly when it'll go out yet, but keep your eye on that. Ethan will be hosting it. And thank you very much, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.
Cheers.